we go.
Hello, my name is George Geear, Vice President Emeritus of the HBSA. Back in 1985, I arranged with David Penn to meet him at a military range at Henley Park. That was being used by my unit for machine gun practice. We then set up the Vickers Gun, which was not quite as easy as it was supposed to be. When it turned up, we opened the crate and it was in lots of little pieces. Apparently somebody at the museum had taken it completely apart to clean it and wasn't able to put it back together again. So the film you're now going to see is a result of several hours putting this Vickers together, head spacing it and getting the wretched thing to work.
Right, this is the Vickers machine gun Mark I, which originated in 1912. It's a Vickers improved version of the original Maxim machine gun by being lightened as far as possible and having the breech mechanism inverted in order to cut down the bulk of the receiver in the rear. It's operated by recoil of the barrel, gas assisted at this end by a cone and cup arrangement which increases the recoil effect of the expanding gases on the barrel and pushes the barrel back that much harder. This having a Mark II nose cone, which is bulletproof, introduced at the end of the First World War when they found that a lot of Vickers machine guns were being damaged by being struck on the muzzle by bullets. The ammunition is fed in. Here's an original First World War belt. Belt fed from right to left. The action of the barrel on recoil, actuating this mechanism here, which draws the belt across. Right, the breech mechanism works on the toggle joint principle. This joint you can see moving here is very much like a human knee. As long as the leg is straight and the knee depressed like so, any thrust on the foot in an upward direction cannot break that joint. As soon as the joint starts to break, then of course the knee will bend. Same system is used here. In this fully down position, it will resist any thrust in this direction. However, on recoil, the cocking lever here is forced back. The tail of the cocking lever hits this roller, forcing the joint to break. Due to the muzzle attachment and recoil, there's enough residual energy to force the action back, thus withdrawing the fired cartridge from the barrel, dropping it below, at the same time pulling an unfired cartridge from the feedway, dropping the carrier, which then goes forward, places what was the top round into the barrel, pulling the ejector strip up, collecting a new round from the breech, at the same time firing, and the cycle repeating itself like this. Left. At this point, it is necessary to pull the belt in till the first round catches. The cocking action in fact has to be repeated twice. The first time I do it, it will collect a live round. If I lift the top cover and you look inside, you'll see here that it has collected a live round. The live round is then pulled back, drop level with the barrel. The recoil of the barrel, which comes back about 5/8 of an inch, drives the next round across. As the breech block goes forwards, it chambers the bottom round and collects the top round. To unload, without touching the belt, I pull the cocking handle to the rear twice, removing the live round that was in the barrel, together with the live round which is in the breech block. Then by depressing the top thumb and bottom finger catches, I can withdraw the belt by pulling straight out, like so. In case of a jam with the Vickers machine gun, the gunner would know by the position of the crank handle the basic cause of the stoppage. There are 4 known positions that this can happen in. Position number 1, position number 2, position number 3, and position number 4 with it fully home. Position number 1, this indicates that the lock is unable to come back far enough to allow the extractor to drop. The remedy for this is to pull the crank handle onto the roller, pull the belt to the left front and let go the crank handle. He is miming here, as we have no belt in the gun. If after carrying out this action the crank handle stops in the same position when going forward, pull crank handle onto roller, open the rear cover, clear the face of the extractor, change the lock, and reload. If the failure reoccurs, repeat the first movement and lighten the fusee spring by 3 clicks. The second position. This indicates the lock is unable to go fully home after recoil. Action. Force the crank handle to the rear and call out clearing plug.
Clearing plug.
Open the rear cover, lift up the lock and examine the cartridge on the face of the extractor. If a damaged cartridge or an undamaged cartridge with the front portion of a separated case adhering to it is found, call out "Don't want it."
Don't want it.
Clear the face of the extractor and reload. If an undamaged cartridge with no front portion of separated case adhering to it is found on the extractor, clear the face of the extractor, replace the lock, keeping the crank handle on the roller. Take the clearing plug, seeing that the centre pin is back, and insert it into the chamber. Push the pin well home by allowing the lock to go forward slowly. Keep a firm pressure on the crank handle. Give the clearing plug a rocking motion, withdraw the lock, strike back the handle of the clearing plug and withdraw it, seeing that the front portion of the separated case is on the clearing plug, and reload. Third position of the crank handle. This would indicate that the extractor is unable to rise to its highest position. If the feed block slide is jammed, there is a fault in feed. Slightly raise the crank handle, pull the belt to the left front, let go the crank handle and then strike it down on the check lever. If the stoppage recurs, repeat the immediate action, unload all the working parts and reload. If the first action fails, examine feed block slide. If jammed, number 1 calls out feed block.
Feed block.
Pulls the crank handle onto the roller, holds it there and unlocks and opens the front cover. Number 2, with the assistance of number 1, raises the feed block sufficiently to allow the recoiling portions to go home. He releases the top and bottom pulls from the belt, which he withdraws until the top cartridge is clear of the feed block, and rectifies the belt or cartridges if necessary. He replaces the feed block, pushing the slide over to the left. Number 1 lowers and locks the front cover. Pulls the belt to the left front and releases the crank handle. If slide is free, number 1 calls out extractor.
Extractor.
And opens the front cover. Number 2 forces down the horns of the extractor. Number 1 clears the face of the extractor and changes the lock. Number 2 depresses the pulls, withdraws the belt and removes the first cartridge in the belt. And then number 1 closes and locks the front cover and reloads. Fourth position of the cocking handle is in the fully down position. This would indicate that there has been no explosion, or if any, there has been little or no recoil, the lock remaining in its forward position. Immediate action taken is 1. Pull the crank handle onto the roller, Pull the belt to the left front and let go the crank handle. If this fails, pull crank handle onto roller twice, change the lock and reload. If when performing number one, the number one notices that more belt than usual comes through to the left, he performs the second half of the loading motions.
When we finished firing, what was quite amusing was that the young officer who was running the machine gun shoot, the general purpose machine gun, walked over to me from the far end of the range and said, "How many rounds did you just fire, sir?" I said, "Well, that was a full belt, 250 rounds. He said, "Without stopping?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, we can only fire 20 with a GPMG in an emergency. Why doesn't it overheat?" I said, "Simple. So nearly a gallon of water in the water jacket." Oh, then he asked me what the range was. And when I pointed out this had a range about 1 kilometre further than his, he looked me in the eye and said, "When are we getting it, sir?" I said, "Well, you had it you had it at the beginning of the First World War, and you lost it back in the late 1960s. He walked away somewhat humbled. In the 35 years since we made that video, we've somewhat increased the collection here at Chapel Bay Fulton Museum, the home of the Welsh HBSA. What you see in front of you now is a Mark I First World War Vickers, made by Vickers Gun and Maxim. This is a sectioned specimen, and it lets you see exactly how it works. Now, what you didn't see on the video is the water can. Now, a lot of people think that that contained cold water, which was then pumped up into the gun. That is totally wrong. The water in the barrel jacket will boil after 400 to 500 rounds. To save the steam, giving the position of the gun away, the steam comes down this pipe. At the end of the rubber pipe is under water in the can, which condenses the vapour back into water, which of course can be reused again. Now, if you look carefully here, the pipe sectioned here, which comes down, bringing the steam, comes from a brass pipe, which runs along the top of the water jacket above the barrel. On the outside of that pipe is a tube that is free to fall back and forth according to whether the gun is elevated or depressed. That's done so that when the gun is elevated, the steam comes out at this end, because if it came out anywhere else, it's likely to pump the water back out of the jacket. When the gun is depressed, the pipe slides forward, blocking this hole and opening one here at the back. The muzzle cone here is the armoured type, which I think I showed you on the video earlier, to resist being struck on the muzzle by bullets. We'll show another Vickers in a moment, which is fitted with the Mark I muzzle booster. The foresight on this is designed to allow indirect fire where the target can't be seen. In conjunction with this dial sight, the clinometer, that fits at the back here under the cover, enabling you to accurately set the elevation or depression of the gun in degrees and minutes. For the same purpose, to use an aiming post, the front sight is free to move across like so. Once it's set, that's removed, the gun is locked in position, the top cover replaced. Here's the belt. The main spring which operates the action, or the fusee spring, is here with its adjuster here at the nose, which works in a series of clicks. Right, the hand grips, which are the only pieces of wood on the entire gun, also contain a tube with oil, and if you unscrew the caps at the top, they have a brush on the end to give you two sources of lubricant for the gun. The correct way to hold it is with the index fingers on top, these three fingers underneath. The first fingers pull back the safety catch, the thumbs then press in the firing lever, and the gun will then fire. With a full belt, it will fire just over 30 seconds with a belt of ammunition. Now, I remember reading many years ago that it was an offence to pencil fire. And for a long time, I couldn't work out what that was until I looked very carefully at a picture taken in the First World War, and it says Vickers Gunners at rest, and it shows two guys sitting back in a foxhole behind a Vickers gun, relaxing and having a smoke. And they're not actually relaxing. Well, the gun is actually firing. You can see the empty cases being ejected from under the receiver. And if you look very carefully at the photograph, you can see what they've done is put a pencil in like that. That presses forward the safety lever, the trigger, and holds back the safety lever. And that gun will then continue to fire for 30 seconds, which can be an awful long time. To stop it firing, quickly pulled out. The reason it was made illegal, if you like, is that if the tripod leg collapsed, that gun would carry on firing, which wouldn't be much fun in a small enclosed area. If, by the way, you get a runaway gun with a Vickers, the standard procedure was to grab hold of the belt and throw it over the top like that. That will actually jam the mechanism. Here you see the cocking lever. As it comes down, it hits the anti-bounce lever here, which stops it jumping once it hits the bottom at high speed. The feed block for the belt in this case is steel, whereas on the other gun you'll see it's brass. In wartime, because of speed of production, because bear in mind that in peacetime money matters, in wartime time matters. Hence brass, which is a good strong metal, brass and bronze, tended to replace steel. Although the raw materials were expensive, the time to melt it, cast it and machine it is an awful lot less, which saves time. Here at the muzzle you see, as I said earlier, it's got a Mark II or bulletproof nose. To protect the steel from the hot blast from the muzzle gases, it is fitted with a thin metal cap arrangement to protect it. And as you'll see later in the Vickers spare parts chest, there are a number of these. Here is the barrel going onto a cup arrangement at the front, which again boosts the recoil energy. Here we have another First World War Vickers machine gun, this time fitted with the Mark I muzzle booster. In this case, flat front, not fitted with the later, as I explained with the other gun, not fitted with the later bulletproof protector. This one is particularly interesting because of its monopod. This was fitted to an armoured car or a tank because were was the vehicle to be knocked out, obviously you couldn't take the gun with you without a tripod. Tripod being large and heavy, they issued a monopod, which some of you may recognise in that the lower part here was later used with the Boys 5.5 anti-tank rifle. Here it's got the original First World War large fixing bracket to fit around the water jacket. Right, time for a quick change. We'll now make a quick replacement of the First World War Vickers with the Second World War Vickers with its most modern equipment fitted. It was still in use right up into the 1960s. This is the Vickers machine gun in its final incarnation. Notice at the front we have a flash hider. Quite interesting, the original flash hider was exactly half of that, so it belled out at the mouth. Then someone had the bright idea of fitting another one onto the front of it, fitted backwards and welded. That meant that the flash was totally invisible outside of the line of fire. So one of the ways of giving away the position of the Vickers was removed. So that's the flash hider. Notice that the water jacket here is smooth, not corrugated. In the First World War, they were supposed to be all corrugated, but the exception was made, and according to the official records, factories which had not got available any sort of machine to crimp the water jacket could make it smooth, but it had to be, the metal had to be twice as thick. As far as I know, the only people to make them with the smooth double thickness jacket were the Australians. So this gun is ex-product of Australia. Also, immediate pre-war and Second World War and after production, it has a goniometric or dial sight. Now, with a maximum range of 4,500 yards, you weren't always going to see your target. In the First World War, it was normal to see it. By this time, we were firing over hills, taking advantage of its maximum range. And by putting aiming posts in the ground and aiming at those, if there wasn't a handy church steeple somewhere to see, you could set the goniometric sight here to swivel right through 360 degrees. So your aiming point could be anywhere, and providing you knew in minutes and degrees the difference in bearing between your aiming point and your target, you could actually accurately shoot at the target without even being able to see it. Well, moving as quickly as we can, we'll now make space on the table for some of the accoutrements. This is a bronze Vickers belt filling machine, an ingenious piece of mechanism. Rounds are dropped in the top here in the hopper, which actually should have a larger section that goes above it and locks in, but is sadly missing. The belt is fed down a tray through here. As I rotate the handle here, this pin comes in and stretches the belt. At the halfway across position, 90-degree turn, it's actually pushed a polished steel spike into the belt to stretch it slightly. As you carry on, it pulls that out. This here is feeding another round of ammunition into the belt, and the system repeats itself like so. This is the bar and Stroud rangefinder as issued with the Vickers machine gun in the First World War, patented by Bar and Stroud in 1908. It should fit on a tripod, but sadly we don't have one. If any of you have got one in your attic, please let me know. Basically, you view it through here, holding the two straps or the two levers, rather like so, looking in through there, and the eyepieces at each end produce a split image. When the two halves of the image are brought together, you can read off the graduation in this window here, which will tell you the range to the target. This is quite a comprehensive spare parts and tools kit. Inside, for example, we have spare feed blocks, 2 of them, and various boxes of small parts and tools. And in case you lose any, a complete list of what should be in the box. There is a tool for stretching the ammunition belt if it gets badly crushed, a hammer, and numerous other bits and pieces. Now, I mentioned earlier at the muzzle that there were replaceable caps to protect against the heat and blast of the gun. And there's a pile of several. And next to it is a new front cone piece. It fits on the end of the barrel. Small parts in the 3-4 tins. Right. As a penultimate item, I'm the proud possessor of this, which is probably 1920s, if not First World War, and it's a Vickers machine gunner's waistcoat with massive thick leather shoulder pads to enable the Vickers gunner in an emergency to pick up the gun on the tripod, a heck of a weight, and put the legs over his shoulders, the third leg at the back, and carry it from one position to another. Sadly, has no name, regimental mark in it at all, but that is an incredibly rare item. I found 6 of them in an antique stall for £5 each when I was a university student, and I let my friends who were of similar like-mindedness to buy them for what I paid, £5 each. It's the rarest Vickers item I've ever seen. And now the last item you'll be pleased to hear is this, which is a machine gun core ashtray. What's interesting is what's written on the back. Old Comrades Association Machine Gun Corps, 1969. A tribute to the gallantry of 160,500 officers and men who served in the Machine Gun Corps 1915 to 1922 and suffered 62,049 casualties. My grandfather was a Vickers gunner. After the war, it was decided that we were going to change from 303 to 762 and that we were going to replace the Vickers gun. So they tried an experiment. Bear in mind we had billions of rounds of 303 ammunition. It was common as muck. So much had been manufactured and used that they set up a Vickers gun on a tripod at a range in a hollow in the ground, and they fired it. Not in bursts, but in complete belts, one after the other, for 7 days and 7 nights. They used a couple of belts short of 5 million rounds of 303 ball. They wore out hundreds and hundreds of barrels. At the end of it, it went to the armourers, who put all their gauges on it and declared it to be in perfect working order. One wonders if today's stamped tin and wire spring wonders could do half as well. Thank you. If you have suffered this long and involved talk to the end, I believe there will be a chance for you to ask me questions, but I'm sure somebody else will come on to tell you about that. Thank you again.